What's going on, everybody? It's Matt, aka the Lumberjack Landlord. And again, just what an awesome special treat to have the Uneducated Economist here. Man, it's so good to finally get to connect with you because it's been a year, hasn't it? Like, whew, it's been a
Yeah,
year.
this has been the year of, I don't even know how to even put a word on it for description, but unlike anything that anybody was ever anticipating or
Oh,
could ever have imagined or dreamed up,
yeah, it's crazy. One of the things that I love that you bring to people is the facts, the figures, the truth, right? You've gotten in, you've done the numbers, you look at supply chain, you look at what bonds are doing. You're really actually watching those items in the market and seeing how they're directly correlating to the work that you're doing on a daily basis there in the lumberyard. I love it. Makes sense. One of the reasons I actually had reached out to you was because you and I are a lot alike where if you're if you're a renter, a landlord, a seller, a broker, a real estate guy, a mortgage broker, if you get in my line of sight, I'm going to keep you for half an hour and ask you a million questions
yeah,
because, and it's just like, so much like you described in that last video where, your family telling you need another outlet. Yeah. Same thing,
yeah,
and it was having that question of like, dude, you gotta like go get a hobby and talk to other people about this because we do not care about this stuff as much as you do, you know?
yeah. That's really ends up being the case here. Sorry, this guy should be gone,
You're all
but
good.
yeah, that's really just the case. Like I cannot help myself but to look at everything around me as some sort of like economic sign. Like I'll
Yeah.
be sitting in the restaurant looking at all the different like people in the restaurant, who they are, how old they are, what they're ordering, how long they sit there for,
Yes.
like everything is like, another indicator for me. I can't
Yeah.
help it. It's all signs everywhere.
Yeah. My favorite is when I see a tenant in a restaurant that hasn't paid me rent yet. That's
Oh,
my.
you know, that would drive me crazy as a landlord because I know everybody in town and I know I know some of the spending habits of people. That would drive me
Yeah.
crazy.
I was like, hey, I saw you got the filet. That's kind of nice. I would have liked
Yeah,
to have gotten the filet, but you didn't pay rent this month, so I got spaghetti. What the
I
hell?
can spaghetti.
So yeah, what I wanted to cover with you in this segment was kind of, bonds and housing. And I think what really is surprising to people is, I think that your listeners would be surprised to know that, mine are probably kind of tired of hearing me talk about it. But what we talk about is most people, if you look at the last 40 years, and so over the last 40 years, I've done a lot of work with a guy named Mike Zuber, who wrote a book called One Rental at a Time. Another landlord like me, whole lot bigger, more successful. But he wrote a book about it because he really wanted to kind of dialogue or kind of, kind of tell his story of what he went through. But what I thought was so interesting was, we've always been talking about it. And then he went and did a bunch of the work. And then I looked at the work and I was kind of like, man, I mean, even being in the housing market, even being a landlord, even, talking to renters all the time, I didn't even know some of these things, some of these numbers that he was coming up with. And so what was interesting to me is that if you look at every 5 years, 1980, 85, 90, 95, 2000, 05, 2010, 2015, and 2020, I wanted to look at it and say, geez, I wonder what the least expensive market is that we've ever seen. So I know you're on your phone, so I won't bring up a spreadsheet because I don't want to absolutely cripple your eyes. But long story short is, as I looked at it, I don't think most people know what the most expensive years were and what the least expensive years were. I think what's interesting is the conversation, the banging of the drum of housing has never been more expensive than it is now. I think everything is relative, right? When you're going and getting a mortgage approved, and you know this from the bond side of things, even from the mortgage side of things, but you see it on the bond side too, is that when people are talking about, buying those 10-year bonds, because that's what's backing up your mortgage, what's really interesting to me is that a lot of people look at it and they say, well, yeah, I got approved to buy a $500,000 house. And that's sort of true, but not really. What you really got approved for was the $2,400 payment that you're going to have. That's what you really got approved for, was that $2,400 payment. So it's interesting to me is that if you look at 1980 every 5 years until 2020, most people say now housing is the least affordable it's ever been because that's what the mantra is. That's what the bang of the drum is from all these different media outlets. Housing is unaffordable. It's unaffordable. It's unaffordable. It's unaffordable. I don't know about you. I don't know how old you are, but in the 90s, I never heard that housing was unaffordable. Never heard it in the 90s. I never heard people saying, man, that housing, it's just completely unaffordable. I didn't really even hear that in 2000. I didn't hear about it in 2005.
Try to call me
Nope,
in.
you're good. You're good. So I didn't hear it in 2000. I didn't hear it in 2005. I really only started to hear it in like 15 to 20, that all of a sudden housing is horrible. It's so unaffordable. It's crazy. We need to do all these crazy, weird things to make it more affordable. So as the uneducated economist, would love to get your just kind of guess out of the box of, based on what I heard. Like I said, that's what I heard kind of growing up. When do you think that that most expensive housing actually came? Do you really believe what people are saying, which is now is the most expensive time for housing?
Well, I don't think that now is the most expensive time to housing for the way that you had described it, as far as the availability to make the payments on a more expensive home.
Sure.
That part, I don't see it being expensive. I find it, being very inexpensive. I mean,
Yeah.
never in my life did I ever think that you could buy a $500,000 home for $1,600 month payment. So I mean, like if you were to say that to somebody back, when I was in high school or something, they would have said, no, that's not possible. And so it in that sense, it very much is. How I find it not affordable is that there's really not a lot to choose from, and you are actually forced into those more expensive homes. So if you were buying a $250,000 home that had the interest rates of today, then that would be like the ultimate, right? But you
Right.
don't have prices like they are back then. Now, one of the things that I also think about is like, the affordability of a home. Yeah, you can make that $1,600 a month payment, but are you stretched to the end
That's right.
with that $1,600 a month payment? So the affordability of it, that's really kind of relative to if you can make it for the 30 years.
100%.
Throughout it, you miss a few payments on it and your life starts coming undone. So I don't know. I mean, is it the most affordable? Yeah. I mean, comparatively to what the house costs, to what do you have your payments on it for?
Yeah.
But stretched out to the very end on a month, even the cheapest houses are off the charts expensive, like at the end of most people, like average people's income.
Sure. Well, and I think that that's a great point. And that's why I love having this conversation with you is, one of the things that we looked at is even in 2015, family of four, median income was about $56,000 a year. Family of four right now, do you know what median income is?
No.
$78,000 from
In
20 in 5 years. In 5 years. From 55,775 to 78,500 in 5 years for a median family of four, median income. That's what it's actually raised. So what's amazing, again,
what do you think was the reasoning behind that?
Oh, no idea. No idea. I think it's a lot of things. I think it's wage inflation. I think it's
Well, this you're talking the median of a family of four.
Yep.
Do you think that maybe that the lower income families dropped off, like there were like family of fours don't exist, and that the
It's
only people who
possible.
have a family of four are people who have money,
Could
and
be.
therefore the median kind of, because median is like, you take the 100 people, you go to the 50th one.
Absolutely. Yep. 100%.
So like if everybody who was low income can't afford to have kids anymore, if they fall off of there, you're only leaving the people who can afford it.
Sure.
We'll see the median rise. I guess a lot of that would do with like, how willingness people are to expand their families or to not use some sort of like preventative precautions.
Sure. Yeah. I
That
think
could.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just kind of thinking out loud.
Yeah. No, I think that there certainly can be the social aspect to it, like what you're saying, which is, though they can't then afford it. And so then they don't become a family of four, they might be just a family of three, and so that, or a family of zero, like you've certainly possible as well. I think that, as I look at it too, is, the reason that I kind of went and, Mike had kind of gone the perspective of going as many years back as he did, is that what was really interesting is that same number. So it was 78.5 this year. It was 55,015. In 2010, it was 49,000. So it only raised 10%. But what was really interesting is that in 05, it was 58 grand. So in 05, it was 58, where in 2015, it was only 55.
And that's income?
That's income. That's median income family of four.
Wow. And they're not counting like asset appreciations or something like that.
Mm-mm. No, they're just talking median income. That's it.
That's incredible.
Isn't it amazing? And
Yeah,
so
that is.
because, and that's why for me, much like you, I'm not a feelings guy. I'm a statistics, analytics, show me the numbers, and that's where the biggest boom has been, is that if you look at 2010, it's about 15% more than 2000, but from 2000 to 2005, it went from 42 to 58.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that it might be I'm open to all possibilities that it could be there could be a social dynamic to it, like what you're talking about, but clearly there's more dynamic to, I think, a booming economy,
Yeah.
where I think, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, it's also pretty interesting, like, how easy it really is to make money nowadays. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't realize how easy it really is. Like, I didn't even think about, like, when I started the YouTube channel, I didn't have like this idea. It's like, man, I'm going to make a YouTube star out of myself and make money. Like, I had, like, my
Yeah,
whole
you
goal,
did. Yeah. No.
one, I was going to get paid one time and be like, aha, I got a check from Google. I mean, that was my entire goal. And
Yeah.
now it's like, it's like, it's really well. Like, I mean, over the last year, it's really done a number for me and got me out of debt and gave me a great savings and stuff like that.
Awesome.
I mean, that was something I did not expect at all,
Yeah.
but being able to do it, I mean, I'm going to continue on and hopefully grow it into something amazing, for my family and myself and whatnot. But I'm talking with other people about my YouTube channel, and I mean, just because I can't think of anything else right now, because I was talking with this girl last week. She didn't mean to, but she was looking for money, right? So,
Yeah.
right? So she does this OnlyFans thing, right?
Oh
Whatever,
my goodness.
right? And so I'm like, and immediately I got the same thing. I'm like, all right, I don't want to, and I don't. I mean, it's your thing, whatever, And she goes, no, it's not as bad as you think. I just eat dinner in my underwear. And I was like, that's it? And she was just like, yeah, I just put on some lingerie and I eat my dinner in front of a camera. And I
Yeah.
said, well, man, you can make money doing anything nowadays, And that's
Yes.
like, I wasn't thinking about what she was doing. I was just thinking about how easy it was for her to do it. Like, she doesn't really provide anything other than this 30 minutes of content that she doesn't, I mean, it's like hardly any creativity or anything going into it.
Yeah.
And so I think about how easy it is to generate an income, even off of something as simple as that.
Yeah.
And if people all over just took a little bit of initiative on things,
Yes.
like, you don't have to, like, I mean, I'm doing I mean, I did not I graduated high school. I did not graduate any kind of college degrees, nothing like that. I went right from high school. The day I graduated, I was at work the next day. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I didn't do any studies or anything like that. But I found that I am kind of entertaining. I do some entertaining, like I do a bingo calling at the bar and stuff like that. So I'm up in front of the
That's
crowd
awesome.
telling jokes and stuff like that. And that made it pretty easy to do like the YouTube thing and make these
Yeah.
videos that were somewhat entertaining as well. So that's like where I kind of found my niche in it. But really, there's so many opportunities out there for people to make money. It's just like, all you have to do is just focus and kind of, I don't know what the word, be continuous about it, be adamant about it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
We call it constant consistency.
Constant consistency.
It's
Perfect.
more than just being consistent. It's being constant about being consistent, which is
Mhm.
like you're grinding. And I think, in looking at the numbers, one of the things that I was interested in, because Mike had put together a spreadsheet, did an amazing job. And so I'm just kind of going in and looking at it and trying to read into some of the numbers, because that jump from 55 to 78, I think it's also not coincidental that in 2020, 40% more money supply.
Yeah.
Right. So a ton of money pumped into the market not only, and what we found was, and what the numbers were, is that took 25% of people that were in poverty and lifted them out of poverty, those stimulus checks and programs that the government created. And so whether you agree or disagree, kind of that's the 25, that's where a big margin of people, where that lower income was helped raise to the median, if you will. I think I think that certainly is part of it. Is that I think you see that more so than in any time in history, 3 or 4 stimulus payments, or three payments, and then some of the other programs and things like that, where it was, brought in and posted as income. You know what I mean? Is that what inflates it from 55 to 78? But we've seen, like I said, we've seen crazy jumps like that from before. From '05 to 2010, it was actually down $9,000. It was down almost 20% from '05 to 10. Four family, median family of four was down almost 20%. And in this case, now we're up 40%, or 30, 37%.
Yeah. And I guess, I would say that a lot of that stimulus would have something to do with it. You think about 2010 was a horrible time to try and find a job.
Oh,
Yeah.
yo, horrible,
I
horrible.
I was unemployed during that year, and I was like odd jobs and whatever I could do
Yep.
to try and come up with the payments. That was also, it wasn't too long after that I ended up getting foreclosed on. But yeah, 2010 was a horrible time to try and find employment or find anything to do. I mean, nobody was giving up any money for anything.
Mm-mm.
Uh,
Nope.
um, and I could see now where, I hear so many stories of people who are talking about making more money on unemployment than they were at their regular jobs. And
Oh,
it would make a lot of sense that they would have, more income on their, on the stats this year. That's temporary.
well, we
It,
saw, you're exactly right. We saw, and that's where I think the number, if those benefits and things like that get taken away, again, not voting for or against, I just think that the numbers will show when that stuff gets taken away. I think that's what's going to drastically adjust us off at 78, where I think we can, dip back into the 60s, because I know that, having some tenants that we worked with to get, fiscal help and things like that. And for us in the shutdown, 2 months, bartenders, waitresses, they didn't have any income, and so they had to get on unemployment. They were getting the extra money from the feds. But yeah, I mean, it was, I think our state is like $300, but with the federal government it brought it to almost 1,000.
yeah, yeah.
You know?
I mean,
That
I don't know. I was like, I when I saw that taking place, I'm like, man, this cannot be good. I mean, when I first started happening, everybody's all laughing about it. They're like, dude, you should quit your job and do the same thing. I'm like, I actually like having a job. Like, I like
yes,
the security of having a job and knowing that,
yes,
tomorrow I can show up again. Like,
yeah,
I don't like the unknown that there's going to be a date that this is going to end, like, I don't,
yeah.
to me, that's not so fun, but yeah, I talked with a lot of people who were just amazed by how much they were getting on unemployment. And
Yeah.
then they started working under the table jobs as well.
Well, that was kind of it too. And I think that that's where I think that certainly is part of it. Like I said, I mean, I don't know. I think that more of this is more than just based on tax returns. I think it's more than that. And I think what's kind of so crazy about it, and what we were, kind of the beginning topic of this was, as we look at it, right, in 2020, the percentage of your income that was your mortgage payment, if you were doing the normal, 5% down, that sort of thing, it was 15 for a median family of four, for a median home. So obviously there's areas of the country that break it, but median family of four for median family home, 15.48% was what your monthly nut was, versus, for your monthly nut for a median family of four for a median family house, 15% of your income. We've never seen that before.
Wow.
It's crazy, because this is, actually, let me just really, really quickly, let me check and see. That was with assuming a 10% down payment.
Wow.
And again, it's just purely the math. And,
Yeah.
in the 90s, when you and I would think, because that's when I heard, I never heard housing wasn't affordable in the 90s, right? You started to hear that in '05 when the bubble was really starting to form. But in
Right.
the 90s, never heard of it. And the crazy thing is in 1990 and 1995, the payment percentage of your gross, because they don't share net, they don't, because I couldn't figure out all the tax brackets for everybody. Or Mike and I had worked on this, and he did a majority of that work. But the percentage of gross that it was in 1990 was 31%.
Wow.
31%. And in 95, it dropped all the way to 25%. But what we've seen is it's really not largely, it's almost solely connected to rates. Because in 1990, you know what the average, the fixed interest rate for a 30-year mortgage was in 1990?
8.25.
10.1.
Oh, I was close.
Yeah, you were. So you actually almost nailed it exactly in 95. In 95, it was 7.93. So when we look at these numbers, that's why for me, I get emotional about this stuff because I get all wrapped around the axle when I start like my feeling train going. And so I just have to calm myself down by looking at the numbers to then realize, should I be as excited about this as I am? And that's where I look at it now and say, you and I were talking before we jumped on, and I agree with you. If people are looking for their single family home, they're not sure what their job situation looks like in a couple of years or in 5 years, don't know if they're going to still live in the area in 2 to 5 years. Buying a house now doesn't matter how cheap it is. It could be a horrible proposition if you need to sell in the next 2 to 5 years, because what's the likelihood that your house is up another 8% in the next couple of years after all the run that we've had? Could be a pretty tough run, and you need 8% just to cover your closing costs, your realtor fees, and all that other stuff just to get out from under. So you need that 8% increase just to get to even again.
Yeah, just so you don't lose.
Yeah, that's where I think that, a lot of the brokers, they're just looking at it and they're telling, oh, no inspections. Oh yeah, just do away with the, do away with the need to, the guarantee for financing, do away with that contingency. And I'm like, no, don't get undisciplined. Stay disciplined, stay smart, be in the right position. Don't overinvest, don't get in the wrong spot. And so one of the things that I did when housing was too expensive, legitimately for me, when I started in this business, and the payment was so much and I couldn't afford much of a payment because I didn't make much money, was I just saved up all my money and started house hacking. And I just got into a duplex and then just kept on doing duplex after duplex. I'd move in, fix up one side, move to the other side that needed to work, and sell that. And it was I'm pretty sure my lungs are full of sheetrock dust, because that stuff, that silica never goes away. But
No.
but I think it's one of those cool things that I think there's a lot of people out there that it can give them hope that it's not nearly as expensive a market as you think, but go into it educating yourself, knowing the numbers, listening to experts like yourself, understanding the economy, understanding bonds and how they're working and why we're seeing the fluctuation that we're seeing. I think that the education that you're giving people is just so critically important, because you don't want to get surprised in 2 to 4 years when, okay, we didn't have a run of 40% in housing. Like since from 2010 to 2021, do you know the percentage by which the median house has gone up?
From 2010 to 2021?
Yeah.
125%.
81%.
Dang. I'm not very good at this today.
No, you are. You are, because you're guessing all like in the right ballpark though. And that's kind of the cool thing about this, is that if you're talking about 81%, right? Think about any investment that you had that's up 81% in a 10-year period.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, not a lot of people that are into it, but my Bitcoin,
Yeah.
So,
Dude, I love it.
there's some speculations out there that have done pretty well. But as far as like, having something that is like, part of your life, something that you're like putting that much energy into, having it go up 80% over the course of 10 years is awesome. I mean, that is awesome.
And that's just the value of the property. Because if you think about it, if you're in that duplex, like I was living there and charging rent on the other side. So my nut next door I was 18, my mortgage was $2,100 a month. Next door's rent was 18. So I was paying $300 a month to live there, and so I just want people to, have courage and hope that there is the opportunity to get on the property ladder and do it in a meaningful way where you're not risking your entire family's future. You obviously have to do the work. You have to evaluate it for yourself. But I think that a lot of people, try and keep up with the Joneses. And you know what? I think that there's just an awesome opportunity with understanding. Once you understand the numbers, feel comfortable with what they are, then at that point, you can have done the math yourself and say, do I want to be renting because I might leave in 2 to 5 years. Hey, very well might be the case, or do you want to be owning? It might work for you, might not, but it's another avenue that I think a lot of people don't necessarily think that much of, like what I call becoming a hackologist. I think it's one of those things I'd love to see people just look at the numbers for themselves and see if they feel comfortable with it.
Yeah. And well, and I totally agree with you. Like I said, I mean, I've said it a bunch of times. I want to own property. Like I want to get on. I mean, to be honest with you, when I envision a property, I don't even envision a house. I envision like chickens and a garden, and like I envision like this environment that I used to have one time where I felt like at ease and happy with. Like the house to me is like it can be whatever. My wife likes the house. I want to know what the shop is and if I can put chickens there.
Yeah.
But when when your mindset is that I have no other choice, or I got to hurry up and do this, or you're gonna make bad choices. You're gonna and so that is like where I am kind of coming from when you're saying it's like you really have to. I mean, I guess that confidence of knowing that you're doing this right. You're not doing it hastily. That it feels right. And not just like I think I'm doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing.
I'm just guessing, but my guess would be is that when you get in that position where you want to do something, that those numbers will ask for mercy, because you will be combing through them, running through them. And that's the biggest thing is I think, the reason that I'm so naturally drawn to what you're doing is because you're helping people give them a different perspective, really look at the numbers, understand the process. And that's what I want to do is I want to demystify that for people so they can feel comfortable. And at the end of the day, so long as you're making decisions, financial decisions based on the number and how it makes you feel, that's empowerment. That's people having empowerment to make the decision that feels right for them. And there's no wrong decision. It's entirely up to what makes them feel good about it, but do it based on not having watched, 200 crash videos, but do it based on consuming information, consuming data, listening to people's perspectives and point of view, creating your own opinion from that, then looking at numbers, and then feeling, how does that feel to me, right? That own individual. Because like you said, so I'm all about nature, love it. Where we back up to, we actually waited for years to find the right house until we backed up to conservation land. So we have 500 acres that 500 acres of conservation land behind us that we just love watching the deer, and my kids know animals and we see like, that's what we love. That's what we're all about. And so for me, we knew what we wanted. We had to wait years to get it, but we knew what we wanted, but we also understood what the different catalysts were, what things were going to be moving in order to be able to form an opinion of, and understand that when the right thing came by, cool. We knew that it was the right opportunity, and it wasn't a rush. It wasn't done in haste. It was uneducatedly educated.
All right. That's just the way. Like I talk to a lot of people try to convince me to buy property all the time. Like they'll tell me, it's like, well, I bought my property in 1995 and it's worth 600. I bought it for 120. It's worth $680,000 now. And and I'll listen to them. Like for example, this exact story was like last week. The guy told me this is what he bought the property for, what it's listed for, what he can sell it for today. And he says, and I put a shop on it just a few years after I bought it for $40,000. And I said, really? I said, if you taken that $40,000 and put it into an investment that got 10%, you could buy the whole property right now. And he was like, what? And I'm like, just saying, he's like, well, I needed the shop for my business. And I was like, well, that's different. You needed the shop, that's a whole different story. You invested in the shop because you needed it, for what you were doing. But a lot of that's how my mind kind of thinks about things. It was just like, yeah, it's a beautiful, but I'm, like I don't really have the time, 30 years to invest like that. But those are just the options that, people I don't think quite are aware of, that when you have $75,000 that you're about ready to put down on a house, you could put $75,000 into, again, a 10% interest, like even the S&P 500, if you're, if things work out like they have over history, no guarantees in anything.
Sure.
But I mean, shit, $75,000 in 30 years would be over $1 million.
Absolutely.
That would be, and you could do that, go and rent and be a dumb shit your whole life, and still end up with $1 million in the end.
Yeah.
Not saying that's what people should do. It's just that
Sure.
there is options out there that are not like, you
Absolutely.
have to do what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's
investment is much different from speculation,
agreed.
and going living.
Yes.
And that is I think a huge difference that people don't really look at when they think about. I hear people say I invest in gold and Bitcoin, and that's not investing. Those are speculations. They're
Yes.
investing means like what you're doing. You buy a property, you get rental income, you buy a stock that has a dividend paying to it. You
That's
have
right.
something that is going to be paying you something beyond of just taking your asset and selling it to the greater fool, which is what gold and Bitcoin is. Now, I am big into gold and Bitcoin. I'm not saying that I intend on selling it because it's foolish or something like that.
Mhm.
I like to preserve it in something that I feel is away from like any kind of entity out there who can come and like say, no, I'm confiscating or you can't do this or whatever. It's in my
Full-fledged,
possession. I can hold on
full-fledged
to it.
libertarian. I get it.
All right. But yeah, exactly. So that's
That's
the
me.
difference in it. And that's why I mean I look at like when people talk about investments, I listen to them and it's just like you're speculating. There's a difference.
That's right. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like I said, if you're talking about, buying to flip because you want to try that out, danger, 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 Will Robinson, danger. Don't do that right now. That's pretty risky. If you're not a pro, that is a risky, risky proposition. I know a lot of people that have lost everything flipping.
Well,
And that's why for me, it's like I'll do them occasionally, but more often than not, man, I am such a dork and a nerd and boring that I'll just do it. I'll fix it up. And then I have a nice rental that I can do for affordable housing. And what's funny is that I look at everything, everyone's like, oh, well, that could really appreciate in the next 5 years. I don't even look at that. I don't even
it,
care. Don't
it's
even look at it.
it's not your goal.
Not a
It's not
thing.
what you're doing.
Nope,
Yeah.
not a thing. I want to provide affordable housing to people as their last step before they buy their own home, if that's what they choose to do.
Man, that's
that
awesome.
that's my mission. That's what we do. But we want to help people get on the property ladder because, again, there's a lot to demystify there. And a combination of listening to what you know about bonds and the market and materials, and really as the uneducated economist, having those conversations constantly. I'm in exactly the same boat, constantly evaluation, talk and evaluation. And I totally agree with you. I think that there's different, housing to me is an asset class. The only difference is that it's the only asset class that you can actually, live in, and your alternative is having to pay somebody else's mortgage. Like, I'm the worst property owner ever because I try and get people out of my units. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, you got to agree. I looked at your application. You can totally afford a house right now. What are you doing? He's like, are you literally trying to talk me out of the unit? And I go, I'm an idiot sometimes, but yeah, I mean, this is better for you. So it gets me excited because I want to see that opportunity for people, because I think that for those that's their goal, I think often they don't know all the steps that can be there for them to attain that goal. And that's what I love what you do and what you bring to your viewers, is having them understand the mechanics so they can then take that data and use that data to then make their life decisions. And that's exactly what I try and do just on the housing side.
and and that's really what it is. I've had a lot of people like email me and thank me for just exactly that. They were
Yeah.
like, I really appreciated you helped me make this informed decision on buying this property. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I helped you make the decision on buying the property, and they're like, well, is what you were describing with the economy, and that helped me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I just started the channel because I wanted to have a conversation. I was not trying to convince people to do anything or anything
Yeah.
like that. I was just trying to figure things out myself. And yeah, that's that, like, you have a goal of, helping people out to get into their properties. I had a goal of just trying to have a conversation so people understood,
That's
that
exact.
this stuff isn't that complicated. It is, there's a lot to it,
There's a
but
lot to it.
once you start figuring those things out, it's really not that bad. It's
Nope.
it's there, it gets tough at times, that you really have to try and like dig in and do the research for it. But once you kind of have an understanding of how the bond market works and what the Federal Reserve is doing and how their monetary policies are operation and the cause and
Mhm.
effects from their actions, and not really their actions, it's more about their wording now, not so much what they do. I like to
Yes.
talk a lot about credible threats and stuff, but
Sure.
once you kind of understand these things, then it's not like before. I used to be really scared. I was like a paranoid person, and I'd like, pack guns and stuff like that because I was worried about them, all that's faded away. I'm much calmer and, much
Yeah,
easier going now. And it's because of that lack of understanding that I had
that's
before
right. That's
that
right.
I get now. And it's just like, okay, so it is fearful when you don't understand it, but once you do understand it, it is still a scary situation, but
Yes.
it's not that immediate fear that, you once had. Yeah. It's just like, it's
That's the
more of
best.
like
That's the
this.
best. That's the best advice that we can give anybody, which is what we really want to do is make sure that people understand exactly what they're looking at so they can make an informed decision. So they're not making one in haste. They're not making one because that's what everybody else is doing. They're truly making it because they're at peace with understanding the data to then be able to move with what then makes them feel comfortable. There's nothing wrong with not owning a house. There's plenty of people that don't. And that's complete. And some of the best people in the world don't own a house. And that's fine. It's just one of those things where I want to make sure that people are making the decision based on being informed and deciding that to be the case than to not doing it because they're fearful of what may or may not happen.
Yeah. I do have to say I held a lot of fear from it, but that's from being burned so bad.
Sure.
I mean, but I am aware of that fear, that's the reasonings that I have behind it. So, it's a matter of overcoming that stuff. And, again, like you're saying, being aware of the situations gives you that confidence.
Right.
The fear kind of subsides away. You don't
Agreed.
really think about it anymore. It's more of like, it's like being out there on that river. It's a beautiful day today. But at any given time, you can then find yourself in a very dangerous situation out there. And if you don't have the experience or the
Yeah.
anticipation that something bad could happen, you're dead. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not going to make it off of the river, even though looking out there, you would think there's no way that something like that would be possible.
Yeah. Peaceful from 500 feet away. Scary when you're in it. And that's why, like I said, man, I appreciate so much you taking the time with me and giving this education to the folks that watch my channel. And like I said, I'll happily send these over. Hopefully, some folks get something out of this for them. And again, they can always reach out. My invitation is always open to you. If there's any way, ever any way I can help you, look at any of this stuff, I'm happy to do it just because like I said, I want to help demystify it, help people understand, make decisions based on facts and not fear, and really empower them because it could be something that they're too afraid to dream about because they're so afraid of it. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I just want to help people remove that fear. And if the data and your feelings about the data still lead to you being a renter, awesome, because then you'll have peace as a renter. You'll be peaceful as a renter with where you're at. And you know that, hey, this is what I feel good about. This is where I feel good. Let's do that. And that's the thing that I want people to have is just their best life, regardless of if that comes with renting or buying. That's kind of my
Yeah.
feeling.
That's good for you, man. I think the last time I talked with George, he said something to me. It's just like, the most important thing that I know is what I don't know. And it was
Yeah.
just like, and that's true. Like, if you're just assuming things out there, you're probably going to make a mistake. Don't assume. Try and go and find the research. Try and become that aware so you do know what that you're just not assuming, because a lot of people assume stuff,
Yeah.
and it's that really gets them into trouble.
Well, I love your constant pursuit of knowledge. You've got a big fan here. I'll continue to absolutely just devour the content. So absolutely love it. So for those folks that are watching on Lumberjack Landlord, where can they find you? And, talk us through.
Yeah. So I'm pretty much active on YouTube, Uneducated Economist. I do have all the social media sites. So if you like Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, stuff like that, I post pretty much all the social media sites. But I'm pretty much active on YouTube as far as comments and stuff. I do have the website uneducatedeconomist.com where you can find all the postings there as well. And then if you wanted to send me a private message or something, uneducatedeconomist@gmail. I try to answer all the emails. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get through all of them, but I try to respond to everybody. So
Guys, Uneducated Economist, he is the real deal. Lots of fun. It literally like felt like talking to a buddy and just catching up after a while. So just a great time. I really appreciate taking all the time with us. And again, just awesome conversation. Hopefully we inspire some people to continue to dig deep in the data and what we provide, and help them make the most informed decision that can give them, hopefully help them accomplish something that they otherwise wouldn't have accomplished. So thanks again, my man. Really appreciate the time, and definitely hope we can do this again sometime.
Yes, absolutely, Matt. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, my man.